What's up, everyone? Thank you for watching. Uh, I've got a very special video for you today. As you all know, I love to read. I have tons of book reviews on the channel here, and I read a lot of books last year in 2024. I posted about that a little while ago, and so I just want to go through them really quickly and just give kind of my brief thoughts on each one, as well as point out my favorites of the year because there were some incredible books that I read last year. But before I get to that, if you could just do me a quick favor, if you are not subscribed to my channel and you like books about spirituality, philosophy, history, religion, consciousness, health, and wellness, any of that kind of stuff, please hit that subscribe button. That really helps me out. I really want to grow my channel even more this year. Last year I had excellent growth. I want to continue that and continue to be able to buy more equipment and increase the quality of my videos for you all, as well as buy more books to review. All right, that being said, let's get to it. So first off, I have The Life of St. Francis by Bonaventure. Okay, so this is an ancient text written by um, Bonaventure. Let's see, the official biography of Francis of Assisi in 1260. Okay, so very ancient book about Saint Francis shortly after his death. And it's a very interesting book, gives all of the kind of main stories that you hear about Saint Francis and the way he interacted with his followers and brothers and sisters like Brother Leo and Saint Clare, as well as the animals and how he built his Franciscan brotherhood and all that kind of stuff. So it's not necessarily a historical biography the way we think of modern biographies. It's a medieval Christian biography of a Christian saint, but super interesting, really inspiring, and a great way to kind of get to know how people saw Francis kind of in his own time or immediately afterwards. Super cool. Next, we have Meditations on the Tarot, and this one is published anonymously, and it is a massive tome, the most ridiculous compendium of esoteric knowledge I have ever come across in my life. And yes, I have read The Golden Dawn, the giant black brick book by Israel Regardie. I think this has even more information jam-packed into it. And so the subtitle here says, A Journey into Christian Hermeticism. So that will baffle a lot of modern day American basic Christians who think that there's some sort of conflict between tarot and Christianity. Guess what? There isn't. In fact, tarot is explicitly Christian, and not all of the symbolism and everything, the culture in which it was invented was Christian. The people who used it were Christian. All of the symbolism is Christian. The mythology around it is all Christian. And the people who practiced using tarot for a very long time were all Christian. Now, I know today it's more of like this pagan, anti-Christian, witch, occult type people who talk about tarot and use tarot mostly. That's most of what we see in the media, on social media, etc. But that's not what it was created for, and they're not even using it for the reason that it was created for. And so I think anyone who thinks they understand tarot through the modern way that people use it will be really surprised by the way that it is explained in this book and the depth of wisdom that can be gleaned from the tarot cards themselves for people who know what to look for. All right, and next up we have UFO of God by Chris Bledsoe. Now, my review on this book is my most watched video ever, which is awesome. I'm so glad that it has been so well received. And I loved this book, and I'm really happy for Chris that it's been done so well. I think, I've seen some interviews with Chris. I haven't talked to him myself, but he just seems like a really genuine person, and his story is incredible. And his family had to go through a lot of hardship for a lot of years before he was able to get this book out and tell his story, um, and kind of prove to people that he's not just this crazy person, or he's not on drugs or something like that. That being said, UFO of God, and the story contained within this, Chris Bledsoe's story of orbs and alien encounters, is one of the most researched and verified alien encounter stories in modern times. He has been in direct contact with a lot of people within the American government and military, intelligence agencies, NASA, etc. I even believe that one of his stories made it all the way to the president and was given to Barack Obama by a NASA mission controller, because the information that Chris received from the extraterrestrial or the non-human intelligence he was in communication with was that important and thought to be that relevant, that it was brought all the way to the President of the United States. So um, while it has some fantastical, parts to the story, I think we really need to take it seriously. Our government takes Chris seriously, and so I think maybe we should too. Staying in the realm of UFOs and aliens, I have probably my favorite book of the year, American Cosmic by D.W. Pasulka. Now, obviously, this wasn't written last year. I first came across it last year and read it for the first time. This book was so incredible. I bought a copy from my father for Christmas because it was just one of the most interesting books I've ever read in my life. Diana Pasulka is a religious studies professor, but she takes that approach to studying the modern UFO phenomenon, and she meets with this incredible cast of characters. And the story, goes from secret, crash sites in the desert to the Vatican's archives and everywhere in between. It is a wild ride that will change the way you think about how technology affects culture and how modern religions function and what the UFO phenomenon might be. I mean, Diana herself was converted into a believer during the process of writing this book. And one of the people she works with throughout the book even kind of has his own conversion experience at the Vatican, at the end of the book. It's so well written, it's so interesting, and the content is just literally out of this world. I cannot recommend this one enough. That's American Cosmic. If you buy any of the books from this list, buy this one. Okay, and continuing on with Diana Pasulka's books, the next one I've got here is Encounters by D.W. Pasulka. So, where American Cosmic dives into kind of the more nuts and bolts and crash retrieval and potential debris of crashed non-human craft and this more scientific side of things, Encounters focuses on, well, encounters with non-human intelligence. It says experiences with non-human intelligences, explorations with UFOs, dreams, angels, AI, and other dimensions. All right, if that doesn't get you interested, I don't know what will. This book, man, it challenged me deeply. There were a couple points where I had to put this down and stop reading because it broke my worldview. And I had to process some of the things that I was reading. Oh, man. Yeah, this one is a wild ride. It's more out there when you're dealing with, person to person encounters with non human intelligence. Things get a little weirder than the nuts and bolts, craft discussions. But man, Encounters was just awesome. And I love that she focused on the fact that these encounters with non human intelligence, this is not a modern phenomenon. This is something that has been happening forever. And if you talk to indigenous people, they aren't waiting for disclosure from the American government. They say, no, we have been in contact with extraterrestrials forever. Our ancestors have been talking about this. This is what our myths are about. We have these petroglyphs describing this. We have, other mythology describing this. This is our oral tradition. Here's, artifacts that show, all this stuff. So I like that she pointed that part of it out. And I also love that she talked about, as she does with her other work, some of the medieval and other Christian encounters with non-human intelligences like angels, and shows how the descriptions in the original manuscripts of those encounters sound almost exactly like people's descriptions of encounters and alien abductions today. So if you think you understand Christian history, read that book and you may question some of your understanding of certain famous events. Let's put it that way. As you can probably tell by now, I've been very interested in the UFO UAP topic for the last couple of years. I was not at all interested in it before then. I didn't believe in UFOs or ETs or any of that. I didn't believe in angels or anything really either. I thought it was all kind of psychological or something. And my feelings have dramatically changed. And that started with the congressional testimony of David Grush, David Fravor, and Ryan Graves. Three absolutely impeccable, pilots and intelligence officers who testified before Congress that they had seen non-human craft, that they had interacted with these, that our government has a program to retrieve crashed craft and reverse engineer them, and that we have even bodies or biologics, as he called it, of non-humans that our government has been studying and keeping secret from the rest of the world. That testimony I thought was really strange to hear in front of Congress, so I wanted to look into it further, as I do with everything. So I've read a ton of books and watched a billion interviews and documentaries and everything I could, declassified documents and everything. And there's a lot there. There's no question that these UFOs and UAP are real. That is not even a question anymore. I know our government still seems to be stuck on that sometimes. Not sure why. But no other government questions that, and I certainly don't. So, continuing on, I have a few more books in that vein, including The Day After Roswell by Philip J. Corso. This is a really interesting book. Colonel Corso was high-ranking in Army research and development during the 20th century, and he claims to have come across debris and other parts from the Roswell crash, and he claims that he took that technology and brought it to private corporations here in the United States so that we could reverse engineer and bring that technology to market, first for military use and then later civilian. This includes everything from lasers to fiber optics to transistors and modern circuits, super tenacity fibers that we use to make bulletproof vests, and even anti-missile technologies and on. So what he describes in this book is the actual process of how this happened behind the scenes, how he was instructed by, his superiors to take these pieces from Roswell and bring them to different corporations so that they could develop all of the technologies that have made the modern world possible. And he describes how, they found all this stuff in the Roswell crash that they didn't understand. People couldn't figure out for decades in some cases, but they led to some of the most amazing technological advancements in the 20th century. So if any of that is actually true or not, it's very hard to verify. As more documents become available through Freedom of Information requests, or declassification, we'll see if we can actually verify more of his story. Nonetheless, it is extremely detailed. It is an incredible story and tells a side of the 20th century that, if true, really changes the history and is very important to the history of the 20th century. So this was a super interesting book. I really hope that we can verify more of these claims here in the coming years. Continuing right along here with our UFO UAP theme, I've got Imminent by Lou Elizondo. If you've been following the UAP scene at all, I'm sure you know who Lou Elizondo is. He is very famous for being the whistleblower from the Pentagon who resigned in 2017 and brought the three now famous declassified UAP videos from the Department of Defense to New York Times reporter Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kean, who wrote that famous 2017 New York Times article where they described the Pentagon's secret program to study UFOs that had been ongoing for quite some time. Lou, at one point, was the head of that program. So he was the head of a secret program within the Department of Defense studying UFOs or UAPs, their effects on human beings, their characteristics of their flight, trying to determine what kind of technology they were using, so on. There's a lot of stuff that Lou is not able to talk about. However, this book did go through the DOPSR process, or the DoD Office of Pre-Publication Security and Review, so that he didn't break any laws or anything, or any of his NDAs disclosing classified information. So he goes as far as he possibly can in this book, and that's pretty far. There's a lot of crazy revelations in Imminent, including that he verifies that the Roswell crash was in fact real, and not only that, that there were bodies recovered, which is also something that's stated in The Day After Roswell. Philip Corso actually states that he saw one of those bodies as it was being transported from Roswell to another military base, I believe to Wright-Patterson. So Lou confirms that. And he also tells his story of why he resigned, what he ran into within the government and within the Department of Defense, and why he ran into so much difficulty studying UFOs there, and why he ended up resigning. His resignation letter is really interesting, and it's included in the appendix, and you can find it online as well. I highly recommend checking that out. This is one of those books that will be remembered for a long time as being really groundbreaking and moving the ball forward as far as UAP disclosure goes. So definitely check that one out if you're interested in that topic. All right, now slightly moving away, sort of, from the UAP topic into archaeology and anthropology, I've got Graham Hancock's book, Visionary. Now, this was a re-release of a book that originally was titled Supernatural, and Visionary is a really incredible book. I wasn't really prepared. I didn't think this book would cover the topic of UAPs or extraterrestrials or alien abductions at all, which it does, actually, very much in depth. Later into the book, I mean, you're like halfway through the book at least before he even talks about that at all. Almost all of the book is about ancient cave art and indigenous rituals that were visionary. And so he talks about the theory that a lot of this ancient cave art was actually based in trance-based experiences, either facilitated by like trance dances or psychoactive plants or fungi, psychedelic experiences as we would call them today. And he makes a really good argument that a lot of this ancient art of people traveling to the spirit world or even into crafts in the sky and communing with non-human intelligences is this long tradition of people having these out-of-body visionary experiences. And he traces that through line all the way from the most ancient rock art, 30,000 years ago or something, all the way through to the modern alien abduction phenomenon in a way that is absolutely brilliant. if I ever get the chance to interview Graham, I really want to ask him about this book in particular. I know everyone else talks about the ancient civilization stuff, Atlantis, that kind of thing. I have read a lot of those books from Graham. I've read all the, Fingerprints of the Gods, Magicians of the Gods, Underworld, all that stuff, and those are awesome books. I love them. But I thought this book, Visionary, was even more incredible. I don't know if more interesting, but just really profound and really eye-opening. Um, I talked to some people about some of the stuff brought up in this book, and they just looked at me like I was kind of crazy or something. Like, really, is that a thing? Did people actually describe these kinds of experiences? And I think Graham proves that yes, people have always been having whatever this alien abduction experience is. It has always been going on. And beyond that, it's part of a larger group of experiences that are really profound and have been shaping human culture forever. So, if you're interested in anthropology or consciousness or psychedelics or alien abductions, Visionary is going to be an absolutely phenomenal book. Another book of Graham's here coming up next. So this one, America Before the Key to Earth's Lost Civilization by Graham Hancock. I've actually reviewed this one on the channel, so check out that review if you want to go way more in depth. Basically, it's about the Americas. So it's about all of these very interesting archaeological finds in Canada, North America, Central America, South America. But it focuses a lot on the Amazon and on the mounds in like the Ohio, Mississippi Valley kind of area in North America, and on the similarities between those. I learned more about Native American history in this book than I did in all of my general education and American history classes in college as well. So I don't know, maybe our history classes here are just terrible and just ignore all of our Native American history that's fascinating, but I didn't learn about a lot of the sites that they talk about in this book that I think are you can't understand American history without knowing about these places like Cahokia, or Chaco Canyon, or some of these other places, that are just essential to understanding the real history of the Americas. And he also talks about how the actual history of the Americas has been obfuscated for a long time because of this outdated theory of how people first got to the Americas and when they first got here. For a very long time, everyone was like, oh, people got to America coming through the Beringian Strait, in between the ice, there in Canada. It melted, and so there was an ice-free corridor, and they came down like 13,000 years ago, and they were the Clovis people, as they're known. And it was the Clovis first doctor, and they were the first people in the Americas. They came from Canada, and then they made their way slowly through South America. Well, there's a ton of evidence now that that's just totally incorrect. People were here way, way longer before that. There's evidence that people were here in North America at least 23,000 years ago, and that's indisputable evidence in White Sands, New Mexico. There are human footprints with seeds and other organic matter that were embedded in the footprint at the time that have since been carbon dated. Those are not even disputed anymore. They were heavily disputed at first, of course, like any kind of progress in archaeology. At first, everyone says it's fake, scam, hoax, pseudoscience, blah, 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 until there's enough overwhelming evidence to override the current paradigm, or some old fools die, and finally we can move forward. America Before really tries to move the ball forward on American anthropology and archaeology and history in ways that I'm sure a lot of people will be, opposed to, because it kind of shifts timelines back and changes the current paradigm. But you won't find a lot of this information in general archaeology books or history textbooks or anything like that. I read those books. I read the mainstream archaeology books, and they don't talk about a lot of this stuff. They ignore it. Or they say, oh, well, there's this issue or that issue with the methodology. Well, then go do your own study on the site with better methodology if that's the case, you know. Don't just, throw out a bunch of ad hominem attacks calling people racists and all this kind of nonsense to try and discredit them and get them canceled. I think Graham has had a lot of BS thrown his way, and I think that he has done an amazing job in teaching people about the incredible ingenuity and cultures of the Native American peoples and some of the amazing accomplishments that they had. And they produced massive monumental architecture, and they had deep spiritual traditions and mathematical knowledge, and he shows all of that. I thought it was super cool. Speaking of mainstream archaeology, next up we've got Lost Cities, Ancient Tombs by National Geographic. All right. This was such a cool book. I actually found this when I was on a trip to Scottsdale. I dropped into this little bookshop there that was super cool, and they had signed first editions of this book. It had just come out. And so I picked one up, and what it is it says here, 100 discoveries that changed the world. So this is an account of 100 archaeological discoveries that were photographed and chronicled by National Geographic. And each one of these 100 discoveries was paradigm shifting, history book rewriting discovery. Okay, so we're talking about things like discovering the city of Troy that was just thought to be a myth. It's real. We're talking about that happening over and over and over and over and over and over and over 100 times. And this is just 100 examples. That's not every example. But the pattern that came up is that archaeologists are arrogant and really stuck in their ways, and they really don't like changing the history. They will go to so many lengths to personally attack people, get their funding removed. They will do anything to prevent changes, new discoveries from coming forward that change the history books. Nevertheless, it happens, and it has happened at least 100 times. And I just thought it was such an interesting book. It's full color photographed, like National Geographic does. But each discovery has a full article included. It talks about the people who discovered it, the challenges they faced, the methodologies they used, how history was rewritten because of their discoveries, etc. So it was just a super interesting book. If you're into archaeology and you like actually seeing pictures of the things and sites and stuff and learning, about the people who did the hard, tedious work to shed light on our past, I think you will absolutely love this book, Lost Cities, Ancient Tombs. I have a review up of this one as well if you want to go into it further. Continuing with our theme of archaeology and ancient history, I've got The Giza Power Plant by Christopher Dunn. Okay, so this is an alternative theory for what the Great Pyramid of Giza was built for and how it functioned or may have functioned in ancient times to provide wireless power to the Egyptian civilization. This book is so interesting. He gives more details of the Great Pyramid in this book than in all other books, documentaries, YouTube videos, everything I've seen about the Great Pyramid combined. I mean, literally down to the thousandth of an inch measurement of every corridor and hallway and everything, in the whole pyramid. And then he breaks down what stones were used, what materials were found where, what different archaeologists documented as they came to the pyramid over, hundreds of years, and how this person noted this thing that wasn't noted by this other guy, so it's just extremely detailed. If you're interested in the pyramids at all, even if you think his theory is way too far out there, you will learn a lot about the pyramids. You'll learn a lot about electrical engineering and a whole number of other sciences as well. And it's just a fascinating book, and it brings up some really intriguing questions about what was really going on in ancient Egypt. It seems like there were definitely some technologies that were at work there that just haven't survived, and that we just don't know. They're lost technologies. That seems to definitely be the case. Now, whether the pyramid actually was a power plant of some kind, I don't know. I'm not necessarily 100% convinced. I do think that the traditional stories of it being a tomb and then digging one chamber and then thinking, oh, that's not good enough, let's make another chamber and so on, doesn't make sense. They knew exactly what they were doing when they made the pyramid. They had the entire layout planned from the beginning, and they executed it to a level of precision that's just unbelievable. Just to be able to plan and execute something that complicated and massive at that time in history is an incredible feat. And so I think it deserves more attention, and I love that Chris is looking at it with fresh eyes from an engineer's perspective as opposed to a historian or archaeologist, because he just sees things differently. And lastly, I have another book by Christopher Dunn here, his follow-up to the Giza power plant, called Giza, the Tesla Connection. And this one is an updated book. It's 20 years or so after the Giza power plant. And he talks about all the new discoveries that have come out about the pyramid, about scientific discoveries that have been made, and how they shed more light on different aspects of the pyramid and further evidence to support his theory of it being a power plant. This book goes much more into the acoustical science of the dimensions and the stones used, and just absolutely fascinating. And he has a lot of other experts, who write letters for this and who provide him information. He does a lot of detailed testing and stuff himself. He talks about some really amazing Nobel Prize winning discoveries that shed light on how the pyramid may have functioned. So yeah, both of those books, the Giza Power Plant and Giza Tesla Connection, go together and present one of the coolest, most interesting theories about what the pyramid was built for that I've ever come across. So those are most of the books that I read in 2024. There are a couple that are not included here because they had to be returned either to the library or to my father's library. But that's most of them. So I hope you liked those really quick takes on each book. I do have full reviews of a lot of these books where I go really in depth on the channel here if you check out my book reviews. Now, just quickly to recap here, if you want to know what my favorites were, I've picked out 3 here that kind of show the 3 different fields that I really dove into this last year, and I chose my favorite books from those 3. So starting out in the realm of UFOs, UAP, non-human intelligence, I have to say American Cosmic takes the spot for 2024. This book was awesome. I can't emphasize that enough. I thought the writing was incredible. The information was incredible. Some of the characters it introduces you to are some of the most fascinating people in the United States today. I loved this book. If you're at all interested in the phenomenon, buy it. Check it out. Next, archaeology, anthropology, ancient history. Visionary. Man, I mean, my mind was blown multiple times over by this book. His argument and the way that he builds it drawing from the farthest ancient human past to the modern, is so beautiful and elegant and eloquent. It's really unbelievable. I don't know how he fit all of that in one book, even a book this ridiculously massive. It is huge. It's a very long read, but so good. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, this is a must read. And lastly, for the spirituality, consciousness, esoteric side of things, Meditations on the Tarot is unbeatable. I mean, it has a quote here on the front from Father Bede Griffiths, which, if you know anything about Christian Hermeticism or esoteric tradition, you probably know who he is. He at one time, I believe, had like the largest library of esoteric books in his country. He says here, there is hardly a line without some profound significance. To me, it is the last word in wisdom. Okay? This is from someone who knew a lot about wisdom. This book is absolutely unbelievable. You can't just read through it once and even absorb a fraction of the wisdom in this book. I want to do an entire video series on it that will probably be many hours long, like an hour long of each chapter or something, because it's that dense and it's that powerful and incredible. So, those were the books I read in 2024, including my top favorites. Like I said, if you want to know more, check out the full reviews on the channel. And if you like this kind of content and you want to see more, please hit the like button, hit subscribe down below. And if you want to support me, subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting are probably the best way to do that. But I do also have a couple of books that I've written and published myself, and those are available. You can purchase them from my publisher using the links in the description below. All right, I will be back next week. I have an upcoming interview with my friend and author, Leslie Lee. I'm super excited for that. That should be up either the end of this week or early next week. And I have more interviews coming with other artists and authors, and more book reviews, and a lot of stuff coming, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching.